All right, we're back here again with relationship goals. John Mark's not in here today, but I'm with a couple of the other counselors who are referred to at the church for counseling. James Caldwell, and I'm just going to let each of them tell a little about who they are and what they do as far as counseling goes.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Aguirre. I've been in practice for about 5.5 years. In my practice, I see folks 10 and up. I hang out with teenagers and adolescents a lot, but also do, yeah, I know, it's great, I love it. I also do a lot of family and couple work, and a lot of it with adults as well.
Okay.
My name is Eric Luongo. I'm an intern officially. Been practicing about 3 years in the Frisco, Allen, Lovejoy, McKinney area. And I also see clients from about 10 and up. Originally, my passion was premarital and marital counseling, but you start seeing a few teens, and then more parents want you to see their teens,
right.
And so quite a few teens.
And if the teens get in there, you end up seeing the parents anyway,
yeah.
whether they like it or not.
Exactly. Some impromptu family counseling, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And it's not one of those things where you drop them off like Cub Scouts or something. You kind of have to come in the door.
Yep.
Yes.
But over the last, were you finished there?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Eric. Over the last 6 weeks, I think, John Mark, has been doing this sermon series on relationship goals and relationships with everyone, with your children, with parents, with neighbors, friends. One of the things he talked about today was 5 relationships: friends, neighbors, parents, children, spouses.
Right.
Boy, my wife's not going to be happy. I forgot that one.
That was the
see where my
second one.
priorities are. But, just in sitting out there listening to it today, what came, as a therapist, what came across your minds?
Well, first of all, that the redemption story and forgiveness. Forgiveness, I think, has been one of the more popular topics in the
Right.
Q&A.
Difficult.
And it's difficult, especially when it's a parent, somebody who's in a position in your life that's supposed to love you as close to unconditionally as we humans can love. And when they don't get that right, it's very difficult in a human sense to forgive them. And so
Right.
what I hear there from a therapeutic standpoint as well as a Christian therapist is redemption and the power of redemption, of being able to get it right, or as right as you can, even though you're a product of some, maybe some generational sin or dysfunction you've learned in growing up.
Yeah, and that's one of the things John Mark talked about today, is not doing the same thing. If there are things you didn't like about what your parents did, not doing those same things in your relationship. Do you guys see that? And I know you see that in counseling. How does that play out, and what you see, Jennifer?
Well, I think for many people, their primary learning relationship about how relationships work, both with friends, family, is in their families of origin setting. And when what they learn, what has become normal for them, is something that's unhealthy, it can be a really hard pattern to break out of this way of being that's just your normal way of being. Most of my clients, as they've grown, as they've been exposed to other people, realize, hey, other people are doing this differently. And now I'm starting to understand that the way that things were done in my family was really messed up.
And you think it's normal, whatever
Right.
you grew up with.
Right, because it's where you've breathed and lived and had your being, and so that's just the way life works. That's how you fight. That's how you show respect. That's what families are like. And I think people come to see us when they have that deep inner dissonance of, I don't like that.
Right.
There's something wrong here. This is not how I want things to be, and I want to break free of this way of being.
Right. Yeah, and I think sometimes the first step of the redemptive story before we forgive those who may have betrayed or trespassed on us is really forgive that part of us that is kind of hung on to that. Maybe we feel we've embraced that to some extent. Maybe not quite as bad, but it's a part of us. And so that's that shame that we might be responding to and get stuck with is first learning how to forgive ourselves and then forgive the origin of that sin. And so I see, John Mark talked about that today, about loving our command, if you will, to love our wives, the way we love ourselves. Well, if you start with not feeling very good about yourself or not loving yourself because you feel you're caught in this generational sin, you haven't broken that, if you will, that hasn't been redeemed, then you go on loving impartially, if you will, or you love not as well as you could be. Loving.
So, and I think he's gotten back to that often, that in all relationship issues, it comes back to you. that kind of man in the mirror thing,
Right.
looking at yourself. When a lot of times people, I know you guys see this too, when they come into marriage counseling, it's like, how can the other person
Be
change?
fixed.
Yeah.
What can, and parenting's the same way,
Yep.
How can my parents
Absolutely.
change? That she wants me there at Thanksgiving, but so do my husband's parents, and where do we go? And so that's a difficult boundary to set.
Well, and I think I think it has to start, you have to start by looking at yourself. So one of the phrases I use with my clients is, if you want a relationship to change, somebody's got to change, and that somebody is you,
Right.
right? And so you're the one who has to figure out some of that soul searching, some of that deep introspection of, what's my part in this broken relationship?
Right.
Now, sometimes it gets complicated when you throw in abusive issues and addictions and other
Right.
complicated realities. But even then, I would say people need to look at themselves and say, how did I get to this place?
Yeah.
Right? And what needs to change in me so that the relationship can change?
It's like in Dr. Eggerichs, when in the Love and Respect,
Right.
how he talks about, our typical pattern is the crazy cycle,
Yep.
where a man should be showing unconditional love for his wife and wife unconditional respect for her husband, but they don't.
Right.
And he calls that the crazy cycle. But kind of getting back to what you're saying, he said, how do we get off that crazy cycle? And his challenge is the one who believes they are more mature gets off first.
Right.
So it's kind of a funny way. And usually people laugh, when you say that, but that's really what it is, because that's not natural to change like that when people are treating us that way.
Yeah, and the other thing I remember from Eggert's book is, what are we doing to perpetuate the spin? Because we understand the spin cycle isn't fun. It's
Right.
dysfunction, right? We brought,
Right.
as John Mark said today, you bring your dysfunction in, and then your spouse brings their dysfunction in. And I often say in counseling, are we having fun yet?
Yeah.
I mean, think about the word fun is in the middle of dysfunction,
'Cause
right?
my wife brought a lot of dysfunction in our
clearly brought
relationship. Hope she's not watching,
You just brought a little. She brought a lot.
but I'll work on my part. Yeah.